nobody there, so it's except the cars.
Were you at Mountain yesterday?
No, I've been avoiding the park because there's been people there.
Okay. I saw a car just like yours there when I was walking around. It was pretty easy to keep away from people. I just passed on the grass and
Yeah, you know what I've been liking? I've been really digging running on Washington Valley. So I
yeah,
start right from my garage. I warm up here. I do some of my little weights in core, and then I go 2.5 miles down the road, 2.5 miles back.
head to like Brown and back.
Brown is a little further, I think. I stop at about 1400,
Okay.
like Washington Valley, and then that's my 2.5 mile mark. So then I come back. Otherwise, I got to be in the mood to go further.
Yeah, still good run.
Good run. That's it. I got my sweat on. I feel good. I can go
Yeah.
eat I was treating myself. I made some coconut crusted bananas tonight.
Coconut crusted bananas.
That sounds nice.
So I
Yeah.
figured, you know what? I got to put in some miles in order to enjoy one.
Yeah.
So whatever I just burned, I'm about to eat.
Yeah. That'll be about one coconut crusted banana.
I know, but
Yeah.
hey, tonight it's worth it.
Totally. Yeah, I think so. Especially if it's good and it sounds good. Coconut crusted banana.
Yeah. I also made a nice slow roasted hot pastrami. It came out amazing.
Oh,
Sounds
So
good.
that was a dinner I made tonight. I've been on a cooking quest ever since I've been home, and this thing's been going on since I've been bored, and I've been having the product that we have. So it's just like, you know what? Get back in touch with, my culinary arts.
Cool. Good deal.
That was my day. It's funny too. I've been thinking about the book. Every time I go for a run, I just think. You know what I mean? It's a good time to think. And
Yeah.
I started reading this book, and it's funny. I opened this book up, and I guess in the introduction, they start talking about the bank manager, and what's the guy's name? Ralph. I go, yes,
Was that right?
my name's on there. And then, I got into programming, and it's been very interesting so far. Very interesting what our brains are able to do. You know what I mean? What we could do with our brains, if we push into it.
Yep. That's what we're going to talk about that tonight. We're talking about programs.
Programs. I'm ready to listen.
Maybe let's do some slides, Terry, and then we'll get some questions. Can everybody see this? Can you see it, Ralph? Can everybody else see it? This is from a book that John Lilly wrote called Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer. I have a copy of the book. I'll show it to you. Probably can't see that, though. Can you see that? That's John Lilly. And, man, he thought really carefully about this stuff. His whole book was like a language of understanding mind and programs. And these definitions that Terry put on the screen come right out of that book. Lilly's got a really interesting way, a really precise way of describing things. And, I think that's important because precision counts.
Ken, it's also hyper efficient. Even though there's a lot of words here, there isn't a single word there that you can ignore.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah. Yeah, I've thought, I know I've read these three, he's got
hundreds of times.
So, yeah. Ralph, here Lilly in his book, Programming and Metaprogramming in the Human Biocomputer, not only has one, but he sets up three different definitions for the same term, mind. Three of them. And as Paul just said, the dude's real precise. And economy of language. There's no fluff. He starts off by defining mind. What's mind? The entity comprising all of the at least potentially self-detectable processes in the brain, which are at such level of program complexity as to be detected and at least potentially describable in programming language, the self-meta programs within the brain. Don't fret too much if that sounds pretty dense. As Paul just said, he and I and others have had to read and reread and think about a lot of Lily's stuff. That's his first definition. His second definition is a form of metaprogram in the software set of a very large biocomputer, which organizes metaprograms for the purpose of self-programming and of communication. And then a third definition of mind, the computer brain detectable portion of a supra-physical entity tied to the physical biological apparatus. The remainder of this entity is in the spirit, soul, spirit, God region and is detectable only under special conditions. Now, Lily,
What, Ken?
yeah, go ahead.
What does he mean by entity? Because that's not a word you usually see.
Yeah. Well, actually, I'm not really sure what he means by it. Well, go ahead, go back to there. Whoops, back. Ba-doom, 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 boom, boom, boom. We're back. So let's see a portion. So he uses that in the first and the third definition. So it's like, you know, I mean, you could have said like the thing, you know, but it's like an entity is like a defined something. And he's saying the mind you can define as something, but that something includes self-detectable. Self-detectable? Yeah, self-detectable, not you detectable, me detectable. Self, I can detect processes in my brain. Self-detectable, I can detect them myself, which are at such a level of program complexity as to be detected, at least potentially describable in programming language. The self-meta programs within the brain. The heck's he saying there?
Well, Ken, I think he's saying there that if the program doesn't meet this criteria, you can't detect it and modify it.
Yep.
Right? So his entire purpose of this book is to give you the tools to be able to modify your programming. So he has to start out with a definition of the mind that by default will allow that to be available.
Yep. Yep.
And he defined mind with his end game in mind.
Yep. Yep. And to add to what you said, in this first definition and in the second one, the first one ends with the self-meta programs within the brain. Well, meta programs are programs that control other sets of programs. You have to consider, I know we've covered this, but you have to consider that there's a order like an operating system, which, you know, your operating system controls other sets of programs, which in turn control other things. And so Lily's saying if you go down to the, what can I say here? I don't want to say core level, but operating system level, you can describe something called the mind. But he even defines mind even beyond that. Because there is in philosophy and in neuroscience and in, you know, lots of different scientific aspects, this discussion going on about, is, the mind self-contained, or does the mind contain parts that are, outside of the physical apparatus? And in the last definition, Lily includes that. Let's see, we got some chats going on here. Okay, just see. Ralph, if you're listening, I'm guessing that this is probably a definition you hadn't come across yet. And as Paul and I said, it's Lily-esque, but it's pretty freaking accurate. But I'll give everybody that this requires some thought and some experience. Okay, let's. All right. So, what's a program then? Right, Ralph. You've been reading about the book, and it talks about. Now you're in the part that talks about programs, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So a program, let me minimize this, set of internally consistent instructions for the computation of signals, the formation of information, the storage of both, the preparation of messages, the logical processes to be used, the selection processes, and the storage addresses, all occurring within a biocomputer, a brain. I could say the same thing about my computer. The programs do a whole bunch, run all sorts of activities. And this definition is basically saying that, it's going to run, it runs all activities like that. If you look at that blue part there, computation of signals, the formation of information, the storage, the preparation of messages, the logical processes, the selection, the storage addresses. You tell me something that's not in that. But look at the part that says internally consistent. We had a lengthy discussion with our friend George early today about internal consistency, because we were really hammering on some of George's programs, especially the ones that support his arrogant behavior. And George would say things like, I will start to do something different about that, without really addressing the fact that everything he does with that program already operates consistently. It's not like today I'm going to, logically tell myself to change the way I operate. That's not the way programs work. They don't work that way in your iPhone or in your Mac or in your PC. They're internally consistent. Look at the second thing that Lily said. All human beings, all persons who reach adulthood in the world today are programmed biocomputers. That's me, and that's you, Ralph. You and I both be programmed biocomputers. No one of us, or neither one of us, can escape our own nature as programmable entities. Check this last thing out, he says. Literally, each of us may be our programs, nothing more, nothing less. Holy shit, are you kidding?
But Ken, I don't believe you. I don't believe any of this. So blah.
Yeah.
Blah on you. I don't believe this.
I don't believe this, because you are a unique individual, Paul, and well, you're running something other than programs.
Actually, it doesn't matter if I believe this or not. It's a valid way to talk about what's going on.
Yep.
Believe it if you want, don't believe it if you don't want.
Yep. Find it out for yourself. Or not.
So how's the process of writing a program? Can you go into more detail of that?
How you write a program?
All right, so you can, in the book, I'm getting at programs. The guy in the first example is learning to identify something wrong with him. So he needs to write a program, whatever it is that, the verbiage is. But now go back into that process. What are we doing in our brains? Because it talks about, repeating.
Yep. I'll give it to you this way. I'm sure others will come on. I was listening to a podcast yesterday from a guy named Jordan Peterson. And he was talking about memories. Well, the main part of his podcast was he wrote this book called like the 12 Rules of something. It's really, it's definitely worth a read. But then he did a bunch of podcasts breaking down his 12 rules. And one of his rules is tell the truth, or at least don't lie. Started to say, well, you really can't tell really what the truth is, but most of us know what a lie is. But as part of the podcast, he was like, all right, what's your memories, really? He's saying. And like a lot of people think, oh, my memories, I'm so fond of them. And I think about them and I think longly or fondly about all the past experiences I have. And that's not the purpose of memory. Memory, Ralph, is like a program. Just like when we talked about that sea slug example, when the scientist put a little prickly thing in the siphon of the sea slug and added a charge, and anatomically he looked under a microscope and holy shit, he actually saw the neurons forming a memory. Actual neuron paths were being formed, and he was able to see it like in this, well, sort of like in this chart that Terry just put up. It's a pretty groundbreaking thing. It was the first time ever that memory was understood to be an anatomical process. So just like the sea slug got itself a shock, things happen to us. We have experiences, and we write, they get tucked into our brain or somehow in our neural network, and they become what Lily calls our programs. What you could call our memories too, although I think programs is a more accurate way to think about them, especially since we know that we can write and we can modify programs. But it turns out, if you listen to Jordan Peterson's podcast, he says, guess what? You can do the same thing with memories. The purpose of a memory, he said, is not so you can think fondly about what you and Iona did 5 years ago. It's really, you use your memories, your programs, to navigate through life. It's really how you navigate. It's how you do everything. It's how you do your business. It's how you do relationships. Those memories are there so you can navigate through shit. Think about it this way. A map maker is called a cartographer. You're a cartographer. So am I. We have maps. Those are our memories. Those are our programs. And those things we write based on our experiences, and then we use them to navigate through life. So today's conversation with George, we were basically like, George, your map sucks in a lot of big, important respects, especially the respect that you think you're a lone solo entity that doesn't need to get along with people. George, are you on? Am I describing that accurately there? Hold on a second here.
He's listed as being on.
Okay, well, maybe I just need to turn his mic on.
Can you hear me now?
I can hear you now. Good.
Okay.
So, were we talking to you today about a program?
Yes.
And were we talking today about, pointing or asking you how you wrote that program? Maybe that was yesterday's call, or how you came about to write this arrogant program?
Yeah, we talked a lot about that. Mm-hmm.
And were we also talking to you about how the very way that you navigate everything you do is through that program?
Yep.
So Ralph wants to know how a program gets written. So how did you come to write that program, George?
Okay, so so to start from somewhere simple, I thought that a lot of what was going around me was because I was controlling the situation. Okay, and how that came from my memories was because, long story short, there was an alarm that went off in my house when I was about 3 or so years old when I snuck downstairs. And because I caused the alarm to go off, my 3-year-old mind thought that I somehow controlled the situation and that I was responsible for that. And growing up, I thought that I was responsible for a lot of things, or nearly everything around me. And so how that played out in relationships was that basically I've been very controlling in relationships.
So
And-
what does it mean to be controlling in relationships? I've noticed decidedly, having hung out with you for a while, that you have no powers to control anybody. And I'm pretty sure that's not just because you lack those special powers.
And Ken, alongside of that, how is this explaining how he wrote this program?
Yeah, ask him. Yeah.
I mean, George, are you talking about something you know here? Or are we being given another tour of the George Arrogance program in real time?
This is a tour. Okay, it's not what you guys want here.
Okay. Well, then thanks. You said so beforehand. If we're gonna pay for a ride, then I want to know up front.
So you're asking how I wrote that program?
Mm-hmm.
I'd be satisfied at this point hearing how you wrote any program, or maybe better yet, whether you actually know how you wrote a program or when you wrote a program, so you can describe its origin and then its impact on behavior. If you can go in that place, that would be helpful, I think, to Ralph's question.
Okay. So I starting from the idea that I thought I could control people. Well, I wrote that program because of at the that time when an alarm went off when I was about 3 years old or so. I needed to make sense of the situation somehow, right? There's an alarm blaring, and I had snuck downstairs, and I ended up hiding in a closet. And at this point, I'm not even sure the thought process behind hiding in the closet, but my 3-year-old mind had to make sense of that situation. And so, yep.
And you made sense of it how?
That I was responsible or somehow controlled this this event.
Or in some way, are you trying to control events happening? Because that one you couldn't control. Like as a kid, not being able to shut off the alarm. Maybe now what you're saying is control is always a thing of shutting off an alarm.
Yeah, Ralph, that probably is a way better explanation. Yeah. And so tying that to the control thing, I try and control situations so the alarm doesn't go off, so to speak. Does that make sense?
It does. The reason why I'm asking, like, okay, I'm trying to see, you have more experience than I do at like programs and this whole process of logic. So like as I've been introduced to this, I've been trying to exercise my brain too, and just thinking about what my past are, what my behaviors are, things that I do currently, and how to tie them back. And like I'm having memories too, and I'm not sure if it's one memory that made a program for myself that I'm trying to change, you know what I'm saying? Or if it's like a lump of memories that made, ultimately cause the course of action for me to, be this way, or say, in your case, cause you to be, arrogant. Maybe it's not
Mm-hmm.
just one thing. Maybe it's, you know what I mean? It's dozens of things that have happened.
Ralph, if you look at the picture, the upside down pyramid,
Uh-huh.
it starts at the bottom very simply, where there would be just one idea that came across. But each level, it blossoms out to more and more and more and more that supports that one little one at the bottom.
Mm.
See?
I don't think that's really where his question leads, though.
Oh, okay.
Okay, Ralph, look, the thing about it like this. Yeah, there are lots of events that are in the string. Okay, in other words, when you think about a program, and you start going back to the memories. You say, oh, this could have caused it, and that could, oh, look, and that could have caused it. And you keep, it was present here, 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 and here. And you go back through it and you
Yeah.
start looking, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, look at them chronologically, and there's not that many. There's one. There's a place that it started. At least there's a place that's identified as having started in your thinking, right? I mean, you weren't born with that thought, and because you have to develop the thought somehow or the other. And so through the experiences that you had, the memories that you stored, those memories congealed into an action that you took as a result of a particular stimulus. The next time a similar stimulus came along, you probably repeated the same action, and the same action, and the same action. Well, after a while, repeating that action becomes what Lily calls a program. We could call it a habit, but it's still a program nonetheless, because it describes a set of instructions for a particular thing that we're going to do. And that's really all a program is. It's just a set of instructions for doing something. And so we start those at a particular point, and then we modify them and add to them and well, generally screw around with them and so forth because it's fun to do, I think. And so we do that, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's really all takes place with this whole idea of having writing programs. It isn't anything particularly earth-shattering.
Yeah.
Maybe a little bit, but I don't think so. I think it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
The chronological order is something I didn't know. That's something I want to look out for now in like memories. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. See, yeah, because think about this. We start with a blank slate, essentially, right?
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there are some built-in programs. There's no doubt about it. There are built programs that are hardwired, right? And so there are some of those. But then what happens is that we take some of those and something that we see somebody else do or we hear the dog bark about, whatever the hell, it could be anything. And we say, okay, that stimuli causes this reaction, and we notice that. It's like finding our hands. We've been teasing Vanessa recently that Luke found his hands. If he just stopped there, he'd be good, right? If he didn't keep on exploring, but he's gone. And so,
Where he's going.
But the thing is that he does really have to go through that stage of finding out where he is and who he is, etc. Right? Well, that's the same thing that we do. We find out what we are, what we react to, and those things becomes programs. Well, the thing is that Luke doesn't have any experience. I didn't have any when I was that age either. I don't think that I've not met very few people who did. I've met a few that claim to have, but they didn't really seem to have it when you get down to it. But nonetheless, we don't have any experience, so we make mistakes. We don't make big mistakes. We just make mistakes. Sometimes we make bigger mistakes, and then we go back and we look at that and say, oh, that was a mistake, and we fix it. But you got to remember it to fix it. You can't fix it because you don't remember it.
Yeah. I think to add to what John said, if you think about like an origin point, just you were young and you had an experience, the alarm went off and you were whatever in a closet, and somehow you decided that you control things, and that then becomes your interpretation or your memory or the program you wrote from that event. And then a similar experience or some other experience happens. You've already got your map, and you'll fit it within that map because it's the way then, if you think you control something, or if your experience was that mom and dad left you in the crib because you were crying and you decided that nobody loves you, well, you'll probably be able to go back in your memory banks and say, see, I that person and this when I was 14 and that when I was 12 and 11 and 10 and 8 and 9, nobody loved me. I've got all this proof of it. Where did this all start? But it had to start. It did. Started with an event and an interpretation of that event, and the beginning of a program being written.
So now, if I can use George's example, because we've been talking about him. So let's say the memory is this alarm going off. And now he's trying to write another program. So the feeling of this arrogance that may come from this non-controlling of the alarm he gets rid of this feeling in his life. So he's not, it's not coming forth. How is he writing now that new program? Is he reminding himself, don't, you have no control. It's out of my control. It's, it's not meant to be my
Absolutely
control.
Not. That's the height of stupidity. Absolutely not. How was it written to begin with? Did you go back and say, I've got to really be stupid now. I've really got to be stupid now. I really got to be stupid now. I'm going to get up this morning. I'm going to really be stupid. No, none of that took place. We just simply did it. That's the same way it happens now. You write the program and then it runs. Once a program is written, well, it's the rule of your life until it's recognized and changed. So you just go back and you recognize it, you rewrite it, and guess what? It's now changed. Nobody will believe me about that, but it's true. Oh, It's going to be hard. No, it doesn't. Yes, it does. No, it doesn't. It has to be. No, it doesn't have to be. Yes, it does. No. And away we go. And so, no, it doesn't really have to be all that hard or difficult. It doesn't have to be any of those things.
Yeah. That's true. That is.
John, can you give me an example of your own rewriting of a program?
Oh, honey, I can give you how many you want. I can give you hundreds and hundreds of them.
You're the master.
You want a foolish one? You want a what? Tell me which kind you want.
I want one that was hard for you.
I didn't have any of those really. The hardest one was coming to grips with the idea that my description of the world didn't fucking work.
Okay. What
was your description of the world?
Yeah. In other words, I knew, by gollies, I knew that you prayed to Jesus, you got your sins delivered, and so forth. And here come another description that said the same thing, exactly the same damn thing, and it pointed to a different conclusion because the description was different. Well, honey, babes, don't you know that this little old boy had to go back to the country and rethink that one? Go sit down under himself under an apple tree and consider for a while, because that was an entirely different worldview. And it had the same set of conclusions. That was one of the programs I had to wrestle with. I don't know what anybody else was.
So that's one where you thought you'd just sit down and pray and voila.
Well, no, it wasn't that. It's that, how do you, what my complaint was, or my concern was okay, tell me how it is that prayer works. Okay, if you can tell me that, then you and I can talk. Because, but don't tell me that that's horse shit, because I know that's not true. I want to know what folks are doing when they pray. They pray and something happens for them. Now that's there ain't no doubt about that. That's a real thing. Okay. Now, how come? That's what I want to know. I'm not mad about nothing. I just want to, just explain me to it. I'm good.
Yep. Yeah.
Well, doesn't the definition of the mind before say something about the spirit? Praying is got to be tied to the spirit.
Okay, yeah. And that's, you try to get a theologian to tell you what the hell that is, Bubba. They can't tell you for nothing, because they don't know. Now you can take my word on it or not. I don't care. Been there and done that. But don't mind me. But I'll guarantee you that they have no idea about what the spirit is because they don't encounter that bad boy.
I don't know.
They
You know
talk
what?
about it. They say,
I've been
"Oh,
part
I
of a
have a
Christian
spirit, and the
church for a long
spirit of the
time. I was
Lord come
raised
down
Catholic.
upon me, and they make me
And I
speak in
think he
tongues
was
and to handle snakes." And they say other things like that.
I feel like I have.
Highly entertaining.
It is. It has helped people though. People that had issues. You know
So
what?
honey, so does Ellen DeGeneres.
You're right. You're right about that too. So does
What
going
the
to.
fuck difference? Oprah is wonderful, isn't she? She gives away fucking cars, baby. She gives away cars. You know, what faith do I have? And Oprah done saved me and gave me a new car and a color television. She did. Same damn thing. You know, I don't care. It's fine. Whatever. If people like that, it's good.
But so what? You know, so what is that? You know, what do we make out of the Church of Oprah or the Church of Ellen DeGeneres or
Yeah.
Church of
Okay.
Church?
It's your spirit's connected to that
It's
somehow.
not a difficult thing, really, Ken. It's really a pretty simple idea. Look, we don't believe in those things. What we believe is what's real. You know, what we say we believe in is what's popular. You know, Christ, I had a pet rock, or if I didn't, I thought about buying one maybe. My dad said that they swallowed them live goldfishes and so forth. He said they made your stomach upset and they swam around. They're funny until they died. But, you know, I just never got into that kind of thing. You know, chia pets, it's fun. You know, it's a good idea. I don't want one. Hula hoop for fun. I like hula hoops. Yeah, kind of got the action going around the right way. Frisbees are fun because they float out there for so damn long. It gives idiots like me a chance to act like I know where they're going to. I can run after them, chase them, just like a freaking dog. So they're fun for me, see. But other things like that, I just couldn't do. You know, I just wasn't into it, I guess, or physically capable. But it's a fad. We herding animals, we like those things. We all do the boot scoot boogie too. I can't, but there are a lot of people who spend hours practicing it so they can be a herding animal, which is fine. I don't mind. Really, I don't. Gives them something to do on Saturday night.
Yeah. See, I think what you're saying is like, what's the song from like Aquarius? When the moon is in the seventh house, Jupiter aligns with Mars, and peace will guide our planet. And this is the dawning of the age of Aquarius. It's like, yeah, well, is that real? Or is that just something that I believe in, like the Church
No,
of
it's Memorex. Really.
Yeah. It's something other. So we're using real in a specific way here.
Well, I do. I mean, because it's important to me. It's an important concept. Okay. And why it's important is simply because we need to have a way of talking about what we believe, okay? And it's like, why do we want to do that? Well, the other option, the alternative would be to say, okay, I have no control over myself at all. I have no interaction with the world in which I live. I'm simply a germ out here with no mind and no part of consciousness.
Yeah.
I don't know whether I can in good conscience, if I could say it.
Yeah.
Say such a silly thing. I don't think I can do that.
Yeah, I see the point. Yeah, I can't get myself to do that either, because to do that is to say or to claim that what's going on has causes or always has causes outside of me. And what I've done then is I've cut off completely the ability to take a look at my own responsibility.
Okay, so the thing is, what Lily gave us gave a silliest bridge, but it's effective because it's a bridge, okay, and that's the only reason it works, okay. What is it true? I don't know. I don't really give a damn. It's like my reason says, oh, okay, that's what it is. So I bet what it is, and that's really all that happens, okay. But I'll tell you what the bridge is, and what he said is, look, an Earth Coincidence Control Office that's a subdivision of galactic control and so forth. He says, look, here's the deal. What we human beings are supposed to do, or whatever we are, we call ourselves human beings, but whatever we are, what we're supposed to do is we're supposed to learn how to control long-term coincidences. We have to control the short-term ones now. What we're trying to do is control the long-term ones. That's why we're all interested in what Mr. Trump does with the coronavirus, because that's a long-term coincidence for a lot of people. So we're interested in that because we're trying to control long-term coincidences, you see. Well, if we're going to do that, then let's go back to the idea about prayer again. What was that about? I don't think that you tell sheep herders, for instance, not necessarily only money changers, sheep herders, Solomon temple builders. You don't tell them, hey, look, guys, there's this thing called a computer that you're not going to know for the next 5,000 years, but let me explain it to you here. You see, in your head, if you think about things this way, that's what happens. No, you got to give them something they can wrap their minds around. They say, okay, look, put your hands together, get down on your knees, go through this ritual. Can you do that? Oh, good. Now you say, hey, Heavenly Father, you got a minute? Look, I know you're busy, but look, I need this. I need a little help here on this thing. Can you a little help? And essentially, that's what we've been doing, okay? And there's nothing wrong with that. I'm not saying it's bad. I'm saying I'm so glad we have that. But that doesn't mean that that's the only way that we can define it. I mean, I don't think it's wrong to say, okay, that thing happens whether you ask Jesus about it or you just think about it that way. It still comes out in the reality because of how you see it, how you perceive it, really. And
So
if talking to Jesus about it gives you a hand to do that, please talk to him about it. I know he's busy and everything, but let him give you a hand. I'm all for that. Yes, please.
Essentially, are people at church writing themselves programs?
Yeah, they are. But the thing is that they're being told what programs to write. I don't think that's. I can't really get on board with that. That some of these guys that I see writing the programs up there in the front of the church, I'm not really sure that they should be writing anybody's programs.
I agree.
Their own.
I'm with you on that too.
I mean, I'm not saying that they're bad people. Don't misunderstand. I just don't think that they're. I don't think they really understand what they're writing. Actually,
I agree.
Yeah,
okay.
Me too.
I think their heart's in the right place. I think they're doing a world of good. I think we can say they're doing God's work. I'm with on that. Okay. I don't think that's the only explanation for what they're doing, however.
You don't think that's the only explanation for
No, I think you can also define it as saying that there are other things that are in play at play that we may or may not understand at all. And it should, I mean, from having come from that place and having had to remember that place throughout my entire life of studying and working and doing something that's very, very, very similar, but it's not called the same thing. I have the same success rate or a better success rate in what they do.
Okay. All right. Yeah.
I do got to say that there's power in prayer. So the connection, there's validity there.
Yeah, I'm not arguing about it, but what I argue is I'm saying, okay, but what's going on when you do that?
What's going on? Yeah.
Okay, and it's like there's some things that goes on. It's like what happens when you just folding your hands, putting your hands together, and going into this namaste place. What's happening is that you're lowering your brainwave frequencies from beta to alpha automatically. So you've already gotten down below consciousness. And so if you meditate a little bit and say, oh, Lord, and you get a little emotion going on there, would you please come on down here and listen to my please? Come on, I need some help in the color television here. I ain't got enough money with this coronavirus going on, and we got to have a Game Boy thing to work with. And, you get emotional about it, see? And it begins to work you a little bit, and you just get it, Jesus is doing his best to give me a hand. Maybe he is. I'm not against it. But I know physiologically what's happening is that you're focusing on that thing. And so the likelihood of you seeing that thing in your world goes up a whole lot if you focus on it emotionally.
Yep, that makes sense.
Meta programs, if
yep.
you like. But then what Lily would say is he'd say, well, meta programming entities they'd be communicating with meta programs, I guess. I communicate with meta programs all the time. I do. I swear to God, I do.
Too much fun.
I want to say that, you know what, inadvertently, I may have been doing this for a while because, bite my tongue, God, please help me with yada, yada, yada. Meanwhile, I'm really probably just talking to myself, you know what I mean? And enforcing the new program that I want.
Welcome to my world.
Yeah, I'd say that.
Dude,
right.
where you been?
Yeah. Yeah.
Talking to myself and me answering.
That's been what's been crazy on my mind ever since, I don't know, these past few weeks. The powers we actually have over ourselves. What can we control about ourselves? Everything.
Yeah. Yep. A big
And I
old
do.
swath of things, way bigger than lots of people have ever considered.
And I do believe that it does give you, I don't want to say power, advantage over other people. Because again, maybe inadvertently I've thought this way. And I'd like to also think, I'm saying we can all better the game at whatever level, But
Ralph, let's call it a language. Rather than a power, let's just call it a language to define it. It serves a whole lot better.
Yeah.
I think knowing this language, a better communication language, definitely gives you an advantage over somebody who's not understanding, who's letting emotions overrun them. When George's case is letting arrogance overrun them,
Yep.
You got it.
And emotion, actually, yeah. Arrogance is another example of a metaprogrammatic emotion.
Yeah, so it's funny how, again, floating ties into all this. It's like, so now what you're saying is, as you discover these things in your head, to take this now into the tank, so to speak, and then dissect it, looking without senses, trying to remember better. Was my memory as clear as I'm thinking of now in the tank?
Yep.
So is that something like you do, Ken? Like you'll go in and you'll think about, like to go back to your beginning days, would you meditate back onto?
Pick a event, which is a memory, pick any, or do a series, or do it chronologically, or do it any way. I've even done it, I've done it even sexual encounters way, because it was important to me, because how I view women and sex was important. So I went through every single one of them, and what kind of flavor or spin, or what did I decide what was going on there. And, having that ability in the tank space to look at that, to examine it, what happened there? What did I decide happened there? I don't have to stick with that 3-year-old or 5-year-old or 7-year-old decision. No one says if it's not to my liking. And you could see, if you look at it, the implications of deciding it that way, like George is explaining, or somebody who had an experience where they decided that they're not good enough or big enough or nobody loves them or whatever the hell it is, can go back and like, oh yeah, that's not really what happened, but everything that I, treat as real is based on that, or that starting point. How about I give it another different interpretation, because I'm older now and I can see better what was going on. Terry has a, can you see that, George, this chart, or everybody else that's on?
Yes, I can see it.
Up there. You see it?
Yeah.
So, in they walk to the float center. How you doing, Ken? What's going on? I can really use this float. And then they hop in the float tank, and they're they start out in that fast frequency beta brainwave up at the top in red. Can you see that, Ralph?
Yeah.
I'm gonna do this, but I'm so good. I have my day so good. And then they're in the float tank, and it's like, yeah, but maybe it's not just that. And I'm having to, and then they're, that's alpha, and then they're in the slower theta brainwave, and eventually they're down in the delta brainwave, and that's real slow. You could say, using this language thing we're talking about, that down in that delta brainwave, which has a frequency of about 1 to 3 hertz, which I think a hertz is a cycle per second, but don't quote me on that. That would be where those beliefs in real reside. Down there. Take a trip down there in the float tank. And they do. Lily called that self-meta programs. But notice too that brain frequency is slower than the theta, which is like 4 to 8 hertz per second. And the theta you can think of being associated with the emotions. Remember, John said George's arrogance is another flavor of emotion. And think of the emotions as the fight, flight, or freeze responses. They don't come out of thin air. Nobody's like, yeah, just got angry, or I punched you in the face because the hell, I just wanted to punch you in that. No, that's not what happens. You've got a self-meta program down there. I've got a guy I know. I'll call him Tony because his name is Tony. And Tony, every time Tony goes out, even though Tony is a mature man, Tony goes out a lot and gets into lots of fights at bars.
What's a name like Tony? What do you think, huh?
Tony.
Tony. Hey, Tony.
Hey, Tony, how come you got into another fight? Tony's going to tell me. He's going to tell me every time that, I was sitting there, quote, minding my own business, when I noticed somebody sitting 2 seats next to me, sneering at me at the bar or looking at my girl. And then you can fill in the rest of the story, and there's some fight, and Tony's got another legal charge against him for misdemeanor assault that he's dealing with. If Tony had a language to consider it, he would see that down in that Delta place is something he believes is real. I don't, it's for Tony to figure out. It's, and then that thing he believes is real is what's triggering his emotions, his meta programs. And then above that, around the alpha, his programs are being run by his meta programs.
So for Tony, if he can figure out what memory is the initial memory leading him to feel this way, and just one thought, it'll be gone.
Yep.
Well, it's sort of here. Let's let you look at some real life things. Terry, you've got an iPhone definition here somewhere, don't you? There we go. Well, there we go. Okay, here's your iPhone, and your iPhone's operated by what? By an operating system. Now, that operating system works directly on what, Terry? Flip to the next slide. It operates on meta programs like Word, like Excel, like PowerPoint, like Outlook, like OneNote, like Publisher, like Access, etc. What all those are about are operating system level meta programs because they show up in everything else that's written afterwards. Every other, flip to the next one, Terry. All of the apps that you see here, from FaceTime to Viper to Pager to Gmail, all of them are built on the operating system and the basic meta programs. And so if you're looking for what it is that what your programming is, you need to look first at your meta programs. What are your meta programs? Then you say, okay, where does that meta program reside in the operating system of my mind? In other words, where does that meta program reside in my memory base?
Mm-hmm.
Where does it live in my memories of what I think real is? The things that I remember learning was real when I was a young kid. Because if it's still there and it's still saying, hey, what, are you sure about this? That's a sign from God himself. When he's not busy, he goes around, puts little red marks on all these for us. So we remember that we go back and change that one. And that happens with every single person I've ever done a rewrite with. That same thing happens. I mean, exactly the same thing. They'll say, okay, I don't remember anything. And then you'll say, well, where did you live? And they'll say, well, I lived with my grandma, or I lived with my mom, okay, and then how did you live with there? And what was that about? And all of a sudden the whole story starts coming out, the one that they don't remember anything about, the whole thing starts coming out. And you go and say, well, why did you do that? And something that happens. Well, what happened? Why did that happen? Why do you remember that? It seems insignificant. Well, I was hurt and they did, and I didn't know, and they didn't think about it. That proved that I was, you were how old? 2.5, and it proved something. Yeah, I got it now. Do you think that could be redefined? No, that can't be redefined. That's how it was. Yes, that just like that. I know. I was there. I remember. Great. You know, a lot of times when you do that, it's what could happen is be like this other thing over here, you know. And then they say, oh, well, yeah, it could have been. And then pretty quick, you got a whole nother memory, and you're sitting back saying, what the fuck was that? That damn thing unraveled for like 2 years. Wow, check it out. That's a big unraveling there.
Yep.
And that's really, Ralph, that's how it comes down every single time.
Yep.
Yes,
Terry, that inverted pyramid might be useful at this moment because it'll demonstrate how that change that John just talked about would cascade from that early memory through every memory and every program it's attached to, right?
Yep. Yep.
So that early memory is somewhere in that bottom cube. And every cube above it are the higher brain frequencies or the meta programs, and logic that were built on that very early memory. So, Ralph, when you rewrite the emotion behind that early memory, it cascades to very, very large numbers of other meta programs and programs within the mind. So the impact can be huge.
I know, it's something to think about. Like, you know, just again, as we're talking, I'm trying to think about my own memories and, you know, things I'm dissecting. And it's crazy what can be. But, you know, but talking to you guys, I can't dissect it too much. You know what I'm saying? I feel like, you know, time alone, I guess that's where tank time, you can really just concentrate on yourself, you know, or alone time to go back and reflect what you're saying. You know, I never even thought about thinking about what my earliest memories are.
Yeah.
Yeah, Ralph, here's the thing, is that, yeah, anybody can do that at any time. It's that the tank simply makes it easier, dude.
Yeah.
Instead of taking 20 years, it takes 20 minutes. That's the only freaking difference. All the rest of it's the same.
Yep.
It's still the same kind of person, same brain kind of brain. All that's the same, right? The difference is that there's just nothing else for your brain to do except to look at itself when you're floating. And if you have a language to define what you're looking at, it makes it way easier. That's the whole deal.
Yeah. If this namaste is a form of meditation, then the tank is like meditation on steroids.
Yeah, this type of thinking, I'm telling you, you're onto something. and how you spread it to others. That's I think that's for you guys to be creative, how to spread it to others. But it's like, I think once people discover it, it's very interesting. It's hard to just say you guys are wrong. It's really interesting to say, hey, you know what? How do I apply this to my brain?
Yeah, exactly. Yep. You got it.
Ken, I'm telling you, I was jogging the other day and I was thinking about your new float center and how somehow you need to be able to get general public in and out of the new float center. This way, it's like, I don't know, like, those quick thoughts I had in my head. Like, imagine the new float center was more like a coffee shop, the coffee tank, the think tank. You know what I mean? To where people just come in for a quick romance, a couple dollars, buy a cup of coffee, sit down. And then with the ambiance around them and the people there, introduce already the floating. You know what I mean? And I don't know. I thought that would be a cool way to kind of generate more people around the float tank. But I've never seen your new space.
Yeah, I'm going to show it to you soon. But
What
are you talking about is getting people to come in and then get them interested from there.
Exactly. If the culture is like this and this thing's on the walls and there's seminars and shit and like whatever, then I think it's a cool way you can kind of look, man. The other day we hung out, right? What do we have? Cup of coffee. That's what you do with this. It's like you have coffee and you think, you know what I mean? And like you already have your space. You have your lounge set up. Whereas I think that a coffee shop would go well with this, you know what I mean?
Yeah, it's interesting, right? Like a coffee tea kind of shop where people come in and we could, come in, have a cup of tea, and hey, what's this over here? Oh, that's our float center.
Exactly, because people would come in quickly. You know what I mean? Like, look, Starbucks kills it. You know what I'm saying? To come in for a couple of bucks, everybody's got a couple of bucks. You know what I mean? And then as they start expanding their mind, it's like, to take a tank. It's like if I look at this like a romance, a cup of coffee is a quick romance. Get them to do a float. You need some more dates, get them in a few times. And then I think you get a lot of people into the floats.
Yeah, I think you're right.
Ralph, I do appreciate you sharing your innermost fantasies and everything, but I don't know about that we want people coming for an afternoon quickie, okay? Just between you and I.
Maybe. I'll tell you, this hour,
nice thought, though.
This hour challenges how I'm thinking. And I've been using it in examples as they're coming, maybe because it's fresh in my mind, you know what I'm saying? And as I'm going my day and seeing the people and the situations I'm coming along with, but it just makes me think in a public environment, if it's like Starbucks, what are they pushing? They're not really pushing anything, you know what I'm saying? Good coffee, cool ambiance, and people come. Yeah, what about in Ken's case? You got cool building, cool ambiance, and you get, there's a lot of walking traffic there. Somehow, I think you get the right stuff on the wall. People be like, what is this place? Oh, it's this place because you can do this. And then I think, I don't know, first you capture more of the public on a day-to-day basis. Then I think you'd get a lot more people, because this is very interesting stuff. This is not like I don't know. It's you got this is taking out, I don't know, how long we've been talking over here? 2 weeks?
Yeah, I think about 2 weeks.
So 2 weeks later, I'm really starting to think how this works in my brain. The common person, if I was just floating, this would have taken, you know what I'm saying, how many floats? What if I come once a month? This would have taken me 2 years.
Right.
Yeah. Yep.
You need a little bit of language to back it up.
Yeah. And then too, I think like the same thing as like the conferences you guys have. I think clients need somehow part of the float is a 20-minute session, half-hour session, not overwhelming people. And I don't know, it's all about the ambiance. If there's other people feel safe talking in front of other people. Doesn't mean you can't be real. It just means you have to get people feel safe, Then I think that if people feel safe, they can be real and you can get more out of them, out of the tank at that conference level. Then if somebody needs it privately, then you have to have another room for them. You know what I mean? Okay, this is where private sessions happen. For you, your company, because I think like with the coaching you guys are doing, like again, I feel like, Ken, I love you. I came there because you own the float tank. But on the other hand, I did hear about floats. I don't know how. So it just so happened I went to go do a float because I know you. But since I'm in Bedminster, since it's local, I think somehow I would have tried it anyway, along the course of time, just like anybody would. Mm-hmm. But to capture the attention that's why I think it's like you got to kind of, you can't force it on somebody because it's a lot to eat the first time. But it's like, you know what? After, I think John said it best in his book. It's small sips. Like when I started reading his book, he says, don't read the book all at once. You got to read it a chapter at a time.
Mhm.
It's right. This is not easy to digest, but a little bit at a time. I'll tell you, you guys can really, you really have something here, Ken. At first,
Yeah.
I thought you were a little crazy. But you have something. You're still a little crazy, but you
Thank you.
definitely have something.
Yeah. That's great, Ralph. Yeah. I appreciate that so many ways. Yeah, really.
You got to show me that space because I feel like there's got to be a way to get more public to you, get that foot traffic, and then generate what you guys are doing, you know, because this is like almost medical level. You know, I know nobody's an MD, but in some way, it's that kind of level that you're challenging the thought.
Yeah, it is. And Ralph, when you see his space, you're gonna absolutely ape shit because it's between two freaking shopping centers.
Yeah, I've seen the space. Like I drive past it every day. One of my restaurants is very close to that thing.
Yeah,
But I've never driven up.
And you're absolutely right. If he doesn't have a coffee shop there for people who stop by just to say hi, Ken, or to say hi to each other, and so forth. I mean, amongst other things, wow.
Yeah.
Maybe if he's really lucky, he'll have a shop when some epidemic's over. Well, somebody
really.
sue.
Yeah.
As I was jogging, I definitely had some strategies. You know what I'm saying, to think what you could do over there, and even in your spot in where are you, Guadalajara, Mexico?
No, I'm in Puerto Vallarta.
Puerto Vallarta.
Yep.
People should be getting married there, Ken. That should be a destination wedding.
There is no fucking way that I'm going to let like crazy fucking people who are fixing to get married in my house. And no, there's not enough money in the world for that. No damn.
Hey, if there's not enough money, then that's on you guys.
No. That has been suggested, and I've met some of the people involved. And no, I'm not going to let you build a platform over my pool. No, I'm not going to let you have a naked pool party in the reception. No, I'm not going to do any of those things. Take your party somewhere else. Thank you a lot, but I appreciate it. No, why don't you come for the weekend and we'll put you up and feed you for breakfast? How about that?
Yeah.
Hey, you know, I just that picture of the cliff, that resort area.
Yeah.
I would imagine people would love to get married there. That would be a great way to.
You know what people really like, Ralph? People really like to sit there and have coffee in the morning.
Yeah, that too. Listen, I was just seeing that picture of the cliff. You know what I mean? Thinking about thinking.
Everybody thinks the same way because marriage is like that, Ralph. You're jumping off that same damn thing.
That's so good.
Everybody looks at it. Yeah, this is marriage. Yeah. That's the reason. No, I don't want the marriage. Too damn realistic.
All right, what else? You guys, anything else here? All right, well.
It's a start.
How about we come back tomorrow night? What are we going to cover tomorrow, Terry? Are you on, Terry?
Yeah, I'm on. Ralph is going to love it. We're going to start with the parts of writing a program, goal and means.
It's great. I'm telling you, my mind, I can't wait to now just take some time to think about the things we were talking about tonight. My childhood memories, what they actually mean, and how to dissect them. You know.
Cool. You're gonna like tomorrow then.
Good.
Sounds fun to me.
All right.
All
Ladies
right,
and gentlemen, thanks attendees, thanks panelists, thanks Lisa and John and Paul and Jenny and Jesse and George and Vanessa. And
You sound like Mr. Rogers right now.
won't
Waltons.
you be my neighbor? Thank you, neighbor.
Right.
Good night, guys.
Good night. See
Tomorrow.
you. Bye.